Living in this world during these times can be something that is very challenging. We are in so many different battles, and for most people, they are completely unaware of it. Now, above all other battles that we face, we are in a spiritual battle where the enemy is a complete rebellion against our Creator, and he seeks to draw the rest of the world towards his same fate. And this battle is the primary reason for the other battles that we face. And if we ever want to fully understand this world, we must understand it from this spiritual perspective first, and then everything else will make much more sense. But besides this spiritual battle, there are other smaller battles we are fighting. For instance, we are in a battle for our own morality. In this battle, every day our morals and our values are being tested. We see daily that what was once looked at as good has now become evil, and what was once looked upon as evil is now looked upon as good. As an example, the other day I saw Jamal Bryant in his popular New Birth Church in Atlanta. He did a sermon about abortion and supporting women.
This week, America turned back the hands of time and declared war on women in this nation. I wanted us to stand resolvely to say to this nation that if America was authentically pro-life, then they would immediately abolish the death penalty. If they were really pro-life, then they would put more money into Head Start programs. And so we speak to this nation to declare that New Birth stands with the amazing women of this church, of this community, and of this country, that women have the right to have authority over their body. And it should not be legislated by men in Washington, D.C. I want all of us all over this room.
This is a topic that most pastors would have stayed away from 5 or 10 years ago if they actually supported it. But now, a Christian pastor is able to preach to his congregation about the right for abortions, and the congregation cheers him on, and there is no controversy or uproar in the Christian community. This is because the lines of morality have been blurred, and what was once good is now evil, and what was once evil is now good. We fight this battle every day, whether we know it or not. From the content we see on Instagram to the programming that we allow ourselves to be entertained by, we are in a constant battle for our morality. Like I said, we are fighting battles every day. Now, the morality battle, though it is significant and it is a battle that is consistent and never ending, if you are grounded in your faith and strong in knowing whom you serve, this battle does not have to be as difficult to fight as it can be for those who are conflicted with both trying to serve the Most High while also trying to serve the world and align with it. This is not a difficult battle for us who understand where we are to be morally and we don't cross that line, no matter where the world is heading and what is now seemed acceptable. But for us, there is a bigger battle that is a little more challenging for us. And to be clear, this battle is not only waged against us, but the whole world. But it seems that for the most part, we are the only ones trying to fight through it. This battle is the mental war being waged against us. We are in an information war that does not allow us to understand facts from fiction, that does not allow us to live in reality, but desires that we live in a false world built on lies, deceptions, and falsehoods. It desires that we live by the script and narrative that they have written. It is very hard for us to live today because we are always being lied to, and in the mainstream, we are only given the narratives that we are allowed to believe in. And even if we are given news and updates on world events, we are drawn into conclusions that they want us to believe. Because of the education system, the majority of society are not trained to think critically and rationally. They are not able to come to conclusions that have not already been made for them through the mainstream media. And that's why if you ask someone what is going on in this world, you can normally tell what channel, station, or news source it is that they are being programmed by, because all they do is regurgitate the thoughts given to them. And what will result from this is a population of people that will not be prepared for problems and will be herded and guided into a new world that is being reset. You see, this information war has been waged because if people were truly told the truth about what is happening and what is to come, the population would not be as easily controlled. So they've created a population that is completely reactive instead of being proactive. And when problems arise, those that are unprepared will look to the same people that have misled them and not warned them. And they will actually go to them for answers and ask them to lead them. It's crazy. Now, if you ever played a game of chess, there's a time where both sides have strategically moved their pieces in a way that at some point in the game, the only move that either side can make is about conflict. No matter who moves, someone will get attacked, and then the real war in the game begins. That is a complete metaphor to the times that we're currently in. We are moving to a point in time where no matter what, conflict is upon this world. A time where peace is about to be taken from this earth. Now, I know this specifically from a spiritual perspective, as I made a video about this a couple of weeks ago. But what we know is that they have been building the narratives up in this world that allows us to see how they will be guiding this chaos in the secular. It is important that we all understand what is truly going on in this world. We all must have a sound perspective and look at the world with critical eyes, ready for what they want to call the unexpected. As we move towards the end of the summer season, it is very important that you mentally prepare yourself for the world that we are in and that we are headed for. You can hope for the best, yes, but you should be prepared for the worst. I'm going to show you what is currently happening in the world today. Let's begin. Okay, so as we live out our days, though the population of this world has gone through enormous change over the last couple of years, people still are moving with a weird sense of confidence that everything is going to work itself out. There's a dangerous blind optimism that pervades the minds of the general public, and they don't feel that they need to prepare for anything that the media hasn't warned them about. So they sit and wait to be reactive instead of planning and being proactive. The scary thing about the thought of not doing anything until the media reports it is that the media is reporting consistent news of danger and change ahead. But because they are literally not spelling it out for them, the public is not able to see it. The world is preparing for the seals to be lifted, and the one seal that we all should be preparing for is the second seal with the red horsemen when we see conflict on the earth. Revelation chapter 6 verse 4 says, "Another horse, fiery red, went out, and it was granted to the one who sat on it to take peace from the earth, and that people should kill one another, and there was given him a great sword." And like I said in the other video, there is no coincidence that Beyonce reflected this in one of her photo shoots recently. We should be prepared for peace being taken from the earth. And the mainstream media has been alluding to this and preparing the narrative for it all. The nations of this world have been meeting and preparing for conflict, and we should all be mindful of this and understand what is actually going on. We unfortunately tend to be so led by the media that if they are not raising alarm bells and telling us to focus on something, then once certain events leave the normal news cycle, things can become forgotten. People have now grown numb to the conflict in Ukraine. And because it is so far removed from them, it is something that they feel they don't need to focus on. But this war in Ukraine has simply been a setup for the changes in the world order that is to come, and they are planning for the real war. We all must remember that since this war has started, the West has tried to completely block off sources from Russia, so all we ever hear is the narrative that they desire us to hear. And while we see that the US continues to send Ukraine weapons, the media is still developing their narrative for the real reasons the war is to come.
I'll let you know that we have information today, including from downgraded intelligence, that we're able to share with you about how Russia is laying the groundwork to annex Ukrainian territory that it controls in direct violation of Ukraine's sovereignty. We are seeing ample evidence in the intelligence and in the public domain that Russia intends to try to annex additional Ukrainian territory. Russia is beginning to roll out a version of what you could call an annexation playbook, very similar to the one we saw in 2014. Already, Russia is installing illegitimate proxy officials in the areas of Ukraine that are under its control. And we know their next moves is reviewing detailed plans to purportedly annex a number of regions in Ukraine, including Kherson, Zaporizhia, all of Donetsk and Luhansk oblasts. Russia is attempting to set the conditions on the ground by seeking to establish branches of Russian banks to establish the ruble as the default currency in these areas and to sabotage civilian internet access. So what next? If Russia nevertheless proceeds with their annexation plans, we're going to respond swiftly and severely and in lockstep with our allies and partners.
Ukraine and new U.S. intelligence warning Russia is laying the groundwork to permanently keep the territory it recently grabbed in Ukraine by annexing it. Richard Engel joins me. Richard, there could be major consequences if Russia follows through with that kind of a plan.
This is not just a symbolic step. When other countries, the United States, invaded Iraq, it was not to take Iraq forever and make it part of the United States. This is what Russia is doing. It is fighting a war of occupation and annexation. So by taking this territory, annexing it, making it part of Russia, Russia will say then that any attack on the territory that it controls inside Ukrainian territory is like an attack on Moscow. So it is putting down another gauntlet, so to speak, to the U.S. to supply weapons to Ukraine, saying, if those weapons that the United States is giving to Ukraine right now hit territory inside Ukraine, from Russia's perspective, it will be like it is attacking Moscow, it is attacking the center of the country. So it is a big escalatory step. And it comes...
Do you see it? We have become so numb to what is going on over there that we tend to forget that the United States, the UK, and Europe are actively engaging in wartime behavior and narratives. Because the news is so filtered and controlled, you might not know and understand that Russia is stating that war is what they feel the West wants. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said, US and UK want real war between Russia and EU. Our American counterparts, British counterparts, with active support from Germans, the Polish, and the Baltic states, they really want to turn this war into a real war and start a confrontation between Russia and Europe. He added that the US has been acting irresponsibly by stoking tensions with Russia. You see, it seems that the general public will not prepare for what all this means for the world until the full repercussions are seen, and by that time it will be too late. But what has been going on right in front of us are all wartime preparations. The United States is preparing for war with 3 different enemies: Russia, Iran, and China. Last week, we saw Joe Biden take a trip to the Middle East. While the media continues to distract and focus on the most ignorant points like Biden giving a fist bump, what Biden said on his trip to Israel should be heard. This most recent trip to the Middle East, while they make claims that Biden was trying to bring gas prices down, they were actually getting their alliances ready for war. They are preparing for conflict with Iran. The United States media didn't report this well at all, but Biden was there to sign the Jerusalem U.S.-Israel Strategic Partnership Joint Declaration. On the White House press release, they said, "The United States stresses that integral to this pledge is the commitment never to allow Iran to acquire a nuclear weapon, and that it is prepared to use all elements of its national power to ensure that outcome. The United States further affirms the commitment to work together with other partners to confront Iran's aggressions and destabilizing activities, whether advanced directly or through proxies in terrorist organizations such as Hezbollah, Hamas, and Palestinian Islamic Jihad." Yeah, Biden's first stop in Israel was all about declaring the alliance the United States and Israel has against Iran. They have spoken in strong words to show that they are in agreement that if the nuclear agreement is not accepted, which it doesn't look like it will be, and Iran chooses to pursue nuclear weapons, then they will act. And it has now been made clear that there is a threat of force against Iran from the United States.
They want to destroy the only Jewish state in the world. We will never let that happen. Words will not stop them, Mr. President. Diplomacy will not stop them. The only thing that will stop Iran is knowing that if they continue to develop their nuclear program, the free world will use force. The only way to stop them is to put a credible military threat on the table.
We will not, let me say it again, we will not allow Iran to acquire a nuclear weapon.
As the BBC reports here, U.S. prepared to use force to stop Iran getting a nuclear arms. It's very clear. And Israel's rhetoric is even more provocational. In an article from the Times of Israel reporting that the Israel Defense Forces chief says, diplomacy can fail. Attack on Iran at the center of IDF preparations. Army Chief Aviv Koavi on Sunday said it was Israel's moral obligation to prepare a military response against Iran's nuclear program. Hours after a senior Iranian official said his country has the ability to produce a weapon. He said the IDF continues to prepare vigorously for an attack on Iran and must prepare for every development in every scenario. And preparing a military option against the Iranian nuclear program is a moral obligation and a national security order, adding that such preparation is at the center of the IDF's preparations and includes a variety of operational plans, the allocation of many resources, the acquisition of appropriate weapons, intelligence, and training. You see, they are prepping for war and are outright vocal about it. They're not hiding it. They're saying they're preparing for conflict. And then when Biden was in Saudi Arabia in a summit of Gulf leaders speaking on cooperation in the Middle East, Biden pledged that the United States will not walk away from the Middle East.
We will not walk away and leave a vacuum to be filled by China, Russia, or Iran.
We call upon Iran as a neighboring country with whom we share religious and cultural ties to cooperate with the countries of the region in order to be part of this vision by adhering to international law, not interfering in the internal affairs of other countries, and cooperating with the International Atomic Energy Agency and fulfilling its obligations in this regard.
You see? So like I was saying in the opening about the information war, the media wanted to focus on Biden's fist bump. They wanted to focus on Biden speaking on human rights with Saudi Arabia and what will happen with oil production. But these meetings were on war and alliances. And we know this because these are the main sound bites that we hear. And how we got here is, if you remember, the Saudis threatened to accept Chinese yuan for oil. And it was this threat that brought the United States to the Saudis' table, now trying to protect the dollar.
The Saudi kingdom, Saudi Arabia, reportedly considering accepting Chinese currency instead of U.S. dollars for its oil sales to China. This would be a huge change. For almost 50 years, Saudi Arabia has traded oil exclusively in U.S. dollars, and that has been a massive boon to the United States. According to the Wall Street Journal, which broke this story, the Chinese government is, quote, offering everything you could possibly imagine to the Saudis. What would this mean for the United States?
So now, after you understand this threat and how fast this meeting was coordinated, you can understand fully what is going on here. The U.S. is promising support and collaboration in the main war that the Saudis fought in order to protect the dollar and trade. This is the narrative, and because of this, we see conflict being provoked. Now, after the meeting in Saudi Arabia, Iranian President Ebrahim Raisi spoke very harshly in reference to the agreement, saying, "The great nation of Iran will not accept any insecurity or crisis in the region, and Washington and its allies should know that any mistake will be met by a harsh and regrettable response from Iran." Now, this rhetoric and back and forth is not new. We know this. But what was new is that shortly after Biden's trip, Iran comes out and says,
"A warning from Iran this Sunday. Tehran has the capacity to build a nuclear bomb." A senior advisor to Iran's supreme leader made the announcement to Al Jazeera's Arabic service and added that the Islamic Republic has not decided to do so yet.
It's no secret that we have the technical capabilities to produce a nuclear bomb, but we do not want it, and we have not decided to do so. In the past, within days, we raised the uranium enrichment level from 20% to 60%, and it will be quite simple to raise it to 90%.
Kamal Harazi further stated that it would be difficult to return to the negotiating table regarding the revival or renewal of the 2015 nuclear deal with international leaders due to distrust between Tehran and Washington.
You'll notice in this, Iran basically said that the nuclear deal is pretty much dead. And then we see this week, not even a week after Biden went to the Middle East, Putin arrived in Iran on his first trip abroad since the war in Ukraine started. Putin met with both Iran and Turkey's president. And the Western media is reporting that Iran is planning to assist Russia in the war on Ukraine with providing drones, saying that Iran supports the Ukraine invasion.
Turn to major developments in the war in Ukraine. Late today, the White House now warning it believes Iran is now getting ready to help Russia.
Tonight, the White House says it believes Iran is ready to provide hundreds of unmanned aerial vehicles, including armed drones, to Russia and give their fighters training to use them in the war in Ukraine.
Our information indicates that the Iranian government is preparing to provide Russia with up to several hundred UAVs, including weapons-capable UAVs, on an expedited timeline.
White House officials say it's not clear if Iran has delivered any of these drones to Russia yet, but says the training could begin before the end of this month.
The alliances of this coming war are clearly being shown. If you have understood the military doctrine of the United States, we know this conflict is inevitable. Just looking at a map clearly shows us this. The last two wars that the United States engaged in was where? That's right, Iraq and Afghanistan. All we need to do is look on a map to understand the one strategic reason for those wars. Where's Iran? Iran is sandwiched right between those two nations. And in reference to Saudi Arabia aligning itself against Iran is not new either. Regardless of what mainstream media reports, this is all about the Sunni versus Shia conflict. The leadership of Saudi Arabia are Sunnis, and Iran are Shias. They are all Muslims, but the main conflict is about leadership. Who leads the Muslims? You see, in order for the Antichrist to rise and a one-world religion declared, they must defeat the ideology of the Shia Muslims and allow them to accept the leadership that will rise in the coming New World Order. So as we understand more about this conflict, we understand the inevitability of war in the Middle East before the false peace comes. Now here's the thing. This is just part of the conflict being provoked. With all of this conflict being provoked, we know war with Russia and Europe will be bad. War in the Middle East will bring massive bloodshed. But the real problem lays with China versus the United States. This is the main conflict that we should all be preparing for. The rhetoric has recently increased between the United States and China. If you pay attention to Western news, they now oftentimes refer to China as an adversary. They have clearly changed their mental conditioning on China.
Your assessment of the Chinese Communist Party and its efforts?
Well, China's our biggest enemy by far, and second would be a distant second.
Summit in Madrid, where the alliance is outlining a new, stronger vision for the future, it says. The leaders at the summit yesterday declared Russia the most significant and direct threat to their country's peace and security. For the first time, the alliance also issued a warning about China, accusing it of bullying its neighbors and forming a strategic partnership with Moscow that poses a challenge to the West. The leaders included threats presented by Beijing into a new blueprint for its strategy going forward.
The Western media is now engaging in the same strategy they used when reporting on Russia invading Ukraine, with them now speaking on the likelihood and possibility of China invading Taiwan soon.
Morning, President Biden is on his way home from his first trip to Asia as president. The growing threat from China was the main topic of discussion with other Asian Pacific leaders. Elizabeth Palmer has been following the diplomacy and U.S. troops in the region who are training to fight Chinese forces if needed.
Right now, the United States needs Taiwan because of semiconductor manufacturing, the chips.
Chips are in everything, and they've been in short supply since just a few months into the pandemic last year. That's why it's been hard to buy everything from cars to PS5s. Turns out one company makes 24% of all the world's chips and more than 90% of the most advanced ones, the smallest, fastest chips used in today's iPhones, supercomputers, and automotive AI. Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company, or TSMC, is not a household name, but it's quietly making chips for every new iPhone, US fighter jets, the highest-end processors, you name it. And now it's investing $100 billion over 3 years to ramp up production amid the shortage. But the world's massive reliance on TSMC may also leave the global chip supply vulnerable to earthquakes, drought, and geopolitical tensions with China.
Taiwan makes all of our chips, which is why U.S. lawmakers are right now working on legislation called the CHIPS Act, which would bring chips manufacturing back to America.
The bottom line is that we must come up with a package that is capable of passing this chamber without delay. We must act as soon as we can to make sure we bring chip manufacturing back to America because our nation's security depends on it.
But in reality, this would just add to the world's inflation problems because manufacturing in America is an expensive proposition. China taking control over Taiwan means taking control over U.S. technology production. You see, this conflict is very complex. Do not be swayed. The United States is not simply about helping Taiwan's independence because they are protecting liberty. It is much deeper than that.
Beijing taking steps to increase its military pressure on Taiwan, carrying out now regular amphibious assault exercises and military and spy flights over the nation.
I mean, there's so many different factors right now that could potentially lead to a Chinese invasion of Taiwan.
I think for older generations, they may remember a Taiwan that produced cheap toys. That, however, has really shifted.
Certainly on the semiconductor front, we've, over the years, developed a greater dependency on Taiwan. We don't have much choice in the matter. The world sort of allowed Taiwan to become the top manufacturer of advanced chips.
Silicon Valley was created. We created the semiconductor industry here in America. And over the past few decades, we've just allowed ourselves to fall behind.
If something happens in Taiwan, we are in trouble.
Tensions in China have risen tremendously.
Now, it was supposed to be a meeting to find a way amid rising hostilities. But Beijing boasted of its belligerence over Taiwan. In its first face-to-face talks between Washington and Beijing, the Chinese defense minister warned his American counterpart that it won't hesitate to start a war.
Now let's take a look at what has been transpiring. On May 23rd, Biden vows to defend Taiwan if China invades.
Today, with just one word, President Biden injected new unpredictability in the tense relationship with China. A warning, Beijing must not invade Taiwan. The president was asked if he would intervene militarily.
Yes, that's the commitment we made.
A week later, a U.S. congressional delegation made a surprise visit to Taiwan. That next day, China sends 30 warplanes into Taiwan air defense zone.
China has upped its military threat amid the U.S. visit. Beijing made its second largest incursion into Taiwan's air defense zone this year, with Taipei citing more than 30 Chinese vets. The island says that it scrambled its aircraft and deployed air defense missile systems to monitor the latest Chinese activity. The U.S. Senator's visit to Taipei comes amid reports that the two sides are planning to announce negotiations to deepen economic ties. President Tsai says the United States is planning on cooperation between its National Guard and the island's military.
Okay, and then a month passes with rhetoric, and then the United States continues. Again, our Western media did not really cover this, but this month, Florida Republican Senator Rick Scott recently visited Taiwan on July 8th. You can't really see that this is covered on mainstream media, but on Senator Rick Scott's website, he does speak on it. And then after that, the next day, China sent fighter jets over Taiwan. They are responding in kind. The pattern has now been the U.S. provokes and China responds with a military provocation. We also see this last week when the United States sent warships in the South China Sea, and then we see China pushing them out. It's just more provocation. So now we're in this week, and the provocations have escalated with the United States saying they are sending Nancy Pelosi, Speaker of the House, to Taiwan.
With a warning for the United States, if the House Speaker, Nancy Pelosi, travels to Taiwan next month, they'll take strong measures. In a statement today, a spokesman for China's foreign ministry said the trip would severely undermine China's sovereignty and territorial integrity, gravely impact the foundation of China-U.S. relations, and send a seriously wrong signal to Taiwan independence forces. He added, if the U.S. were to insist on going down the wrong path, China will take resolute and strong measures to safeguard its sovereignty and territorial integrity. According to the Financial Times, Speaker Pelosi is planning to lead a delegation to Taiwan in August. The timing of the trip is particularly sensitive for China. Next month is also when China marks the anniversary of the founding of the People's Liberation Army. Sources tell the Financial Times there were divisions in the Biden administration over whether Speaker Pelosi should take the trip. If she does, she'll become the highest-ranking American lawmaker to visit Taiwan since her predecessor Newt Gingrich traveled there a quarter century ago.
Now, if you remember, they planned this visit from Pelosi in April, but China spoke heavily against it at that point, and then they reported that Pelosi contracted COVID-19. Yeah. But now, they're back at it. As I just displayed, China is consistently showing that they are ready to respond, and the United States is continuously provoking. This visit by Pelosi is set to happen next month in August. And while all this rhetoric keeps escalating, this is what is happening in Taiwan. You see, any war with China would be a major disruption to the whole world. But the world is not moving away from these provocations, but it's increasingly increasing the probability of conflict. We have provocations of war in 3 major regions: Europe, the Middle East, and the Indo-Pacific. And it's all being fueled and provoked by the United States. This should not be ignored, but you may notice that our mainstream media outlets are not covering all of this. So while provocations are escalating and alliances are forming, the media still has us focusing on January 6th and Trump and Elon Musk. I mean, it's ridiculous. The fact is, though, that they do know something is happening, because last week, New York City all of a sudden comes out with a nuclear radiation PSA.
So there's been a nuclear attack. Don't ask me how or why, just know that the big one has hit, okay? So what do?
Yeah, okay. Not to mention that it has been shown that in Menlo Park Mall in Edison, New Jersey, they have this sign about radiation emergencies. This world is preparing for war, and we all must not ignore this. War between the United States and China will come, and that by consequence means a catastrophe for the world. Peace is not being created here. All we see is continuous escalation. And when you add the fact that the world economy is projected to head for a worldwide recession, it really shows where we're going. They really play with the minds of the people, though. They raise gas prices to high levels, create massive scapegoats, and later on, they bring the price down somewhat, and people are so happy that gas has come down, it allows them to keep their blind optimism that everything's going to be worked out. The thing that every person in the world should understand is that economic hard times are absolutely upon us. I mean, right now, it's not even happening from some unforeseen event. They are literally telling us they are doing it. Let's start in the United States. A big update to their whole scheme is coming next week. We all need to be paying attention, watching and waiting and seeing what comes from this Fed meeting. The Fed will raise rates again, either 0.75% or a complete percentage point, bringing us to 2.5% or 2.75%. This next rate hike is a very big deal, and you need to be preparing for it. You see, the purpose of them raising rates is to cool down the economy so they can control inflation. This is what they're saying. We haven't seen interest rates increase like this in over 40 years. Everyone should be preparing for hard times right now, and I cannot stress that enough. These rate increases take time to affect the economy, but with this most recent rate hike, we should really start seeing the slowing of the United States economy at the end of this third quarter and absolutely in the fourth quarter. We're already seeing housing projects slowing down. People are already slowing down buying homes, as it has been reported mortgage demand drops to a 22-year low. I mean, putting it in full perspective, that's a big deal taking into account how bad things got in 2008 during the Great Recession when we had a housing collapse. For mortgage demand to be at a 22-year low already is saying a lot. Companies are already starting to slow down hiring and layoffs are starting.
There's been an uptick in tech company layoffs in recent months.
And hiring has slowed amid economic downturn predictions.
If you are not prepared for an economic whirlwind, you are not paying attention. I'm sorry to say this, everyone, but job security is not strong for everyone right now, and you should have a plan of what happens if you were to lose your job. These are things that happen when a recession is coming, and they're not hiding that a recession is coming. They're just not telling you how to prepare for it. The major banks are now reporting that they are seeing the potential for a recession in the near future. Jamie Dimon, CEO of JP Morgan Chase, last week said, "Economic risk nearer than before in new warning." Also last week, the leading measure of inflation flashed another new warning sign on Wednesday. The U.S. 10-year note yield slipped as much as 0.21%, lower than the yield on the 2-year. That's the largest negative spread between the two securities since 2000. The yield curve with U.S. bonds inverted again, and this is a major sign of recession. This article from CNBC says, the bond market is flashing a warning that the economy may be falling or already has fallen into recession, according to one closely watched measure. In the past several weeks, the market has become more spooked by the potential for a recession. Economic data has weakened, and Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell has indicated the central bank would be steadfast in its fight with inflation. Investors have become more concerned the Fed will raise interest rates so much that it slows the economy to the point where it tips into recession. And this is what we are all dealing with as we see the Fed continuing to raise rates. We are being bled very slowly, but most people don't really understand what's going on because they're relying on the media to tell them. Look at this article from Forbes. U.S. will fall into recession this year as worrisome forces grow, Bank of America warns. It says, Bank of America economists became the latest experts predicting the U.S. will fall into recession over the next year, telling clients a number of forces have pushed the economy to slow more rapidly than they previously expected, as the latest inflation data shows surging prices fueling the concerns are only getting worse. And you see, while CNBC reports that 70% of Americans think a recession is coming, you can't really tell this when engaging with the public today. Most people are not preparing for one. The amount of economic pain that is coming cannot be stressed enough. It's because recession is the nice way that the mainstream media is predicting what is coming. But the truth is that the world economy is coming to a complete stop and is going to be reset. We keep saying the Great Reset. I've made enough videos explaining why, so I'll not go into all those details in this video. If you do not understand this, please watch some of the videos to gain a deeper understanding. The point that needs to be stressed here is that in order for any positive economic news to occur, the whole system must be reset. The debt is unmanageable, and as they keep increasing rates, it's just going to pop bubbles. The more they keep increasing rates, the more it costs the United States to pay its debt. They say it costs like $900 million per day to cover the United States debt. And as they keep increasing rates, it just costs the United States more to service that debt. Recessions end when growth in the economy resumes again. No matter how slowly this happens, it will not happen until growth starts again. During the Great Recession of 2008, for example, governments introduced a number of quantitative easing measures, pumping trillions into the global economy in an attempt to resuscitate it. We saw unprecedented levels of stimulus, which helped the markets to recover. But the thing that must be understood now is that the world cannot engage in that same quantitative easing and money printing that it was doing since the Great Recession, because that is what brought us into the inflation problems in the first place. Every time there has been an economic problem since 2008, they just printed money, gave stimulus, and added debt. And now that those solutions are the cause of our current problems, we are in a problem that needs a new solution. And their only solution will be to reset everything, to change everything. And this is why we see that war is also being provoked. The problem we are seeing is again with the dollar. As this article from the Economic Times, which is the New York Times of India, it says, the extremely strong dollar is weighing down the world. You might have heard recently, and might not really understood what it meant, that the dollar hit parity with the euro last week. It meant that you can get $1 for €1. This is the first time we've seen this in 20 years. And mind you, the euro is only like 23 years old. You see, while we are dealing with high inflation in the United States, while they are not in sync with the other central banks like in Europe and Japan, it's creating a very strong dollar that is becoming the problem for the world. As this article in Bloomberg states, King Dollar is the world's problem. Again. The point that we are moving into now is the weakness of the world economy will be blamed on the strength of the dollar. While we can look at many different points of our world economy from retail, restaurants, technology, housing, and travel, the biggest area of concern is the dollar and commodities.
Well, the U.S. dollar has a strong influence on commodity prices, and that's because raw materials like oil, copper, wheat, and gold all are priced in dollars. And so when the dollar strengthens, all of these commodities become more expensive for the rest of the world. And that can ultimately reduce demand and drive prices for commodities lower. Goldman Sachs noting that the strong dollar has added about $20 extra to every barrel of oil priced in local currencies.
The strong dollar is a problem for the world, and as you hear about it, it should not give you encouragement about the longevity of the dollar, but the problems it is creating. As the world is dragged into a recession that is blamed because of a strong dollar, you are now seeing another scapegoat being raised to abandon it. In one of my earlier videos when speaking on the World Government Summit held in Dubai earlier this year, while the media was discussing Will Smith smacking Chris Rock, they were discussing where the future of our money will be.
And what we're seeing in the world today, I think, is we are on the brink of a dramatic change where we are about to, and I'll say this boldly, we're about to abandon the traditional system of money and accounting and introduce a new one. And the new accounting is what we call blockchain. It means digital. It means having a almost perfect record of every single transaction that happens in the economy, which will give us far greater clarity over what's going on.
Yeah, you hear it? We are in the final stages of this narrative, and we all must be prepared for it. Now here's the thing. I do not provide this information to promote fear to you. I'm not fear-mongering as people like to accuse. But there are certain realities directly in our face that we must deal with and be prepared for. There is a reason that our Father has allowed us to be awake to all these plots and these schemes. There's a reason that He has given us a sound mind to see through their narratives. The rest of the world is asleep, and everything will come upon them suddenly when they will not be prepared for it. When this happens, this is what leads people to be moved in fear and do things they normally wouldn't do, which is exactly what we saw during the times of COVID. Those of us who were spiritually and mentally prepared for what this world was bringing were not led into their schemes and their traps, and we must stay with that strategy. Continue to get your houses in order and prepare however Father is leading you to. There are hard times ahead, and you must stay in reality and not look at the world through the same blindness that everyone else is seeing the world through. But concerning the times and the seasons, brethren, you have no need that I should write to you. For you yourselves know perfectly that the day of Yahuwah so comes as a thief in the night. For when they say peace and safety, then sudden destruction comes upon them as labor pains upon a pregnant woman, and they shall not escape. But you, brethren, are not in darkness, so that this day should overtake you as a thief. You are all sons of light and sons of the day. We are not of the night nor of darkness. Therefore, let us not sleep as others do, but let us watch and be sober. That's 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, verses 1 through 6. I made this video so that none of you who are watching are asleep. I do not want any of these things to come upon you unexpectedly, which makes you be led into irrational decisions. When these problems arise, because you expect them, you will know that your only source and solution is Yahusha. You will know and be confident that though everyone is talking secular, everything that is happening is all about something that is spiritual. And because of this understanding, you will not allow yourself to be steered into their schemes and their plots as they try to narrate the judgments of Yah. That's what they're doing. They are narrating the judgments of Yah so they can keep control of the world. Yah's wrath is not for us, that is called to Him and are covered by Him. The world is heading to first conflict and then economic depravity, where no one's money will be able to save them. So with all of this evidence, it must be recognized that you cannot store up your treasures with the rest of these heathens. As Yahusha said, do not lay up for yourself treasures on earth, where moth and rust destroy, and where thieves break in and steal. But lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where neither moth nor rust destroys, and where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. That's Matthew chapter 6, verses 19 through 21. Listen, do not be scared for what is coming to this world. Just live in continuous fear, respect, and honor of our Creator and make Him your priority. Do not live asleep, but live awake to the realities of this world. Do not prepare for a world that does not exist. You cannot make all these plans for the future without understanding how we will move out of these international conflicts and monetary issues that are directly ahead of us. You must have an answer for that first. How do you see the conflict with Russia and Europe, Iran and Israel, China and the United States playing out and ending? Do you really feel that these conflicts are just supposed to disappear with no consequence to the world? You have to answer, how will the world come out of this coming recession when they can no longer print their way out of it through debt? What will be the new growth model for the world in this new digital economy in the metaverse that is forming? You see, there are too many questions for anyone to live in a blind reality focusing only on what they want to see. As an example of this, last year I spoke about the dangers of buying a home and having that as your focus. I have personal family and friends ignore me on this thought, thinking I'm just trying to kill their dreams. But looking at the world right now, they are now forced to see how much time and energy they wasted on having the wrong goals, because now owning a home is far removed from them. If they lived in reality, they will be prepared for where we are today. And this small example goes with everything else that is occurring today. Live in reality and beware of the wars being waged against you that is leaving you unprepared for the real war that is coming. Be prepared next week for what comes after this next rate hike. If they raise 1%, which is unlikely, but if they do, that means they are really getting ready to turn things up. Be ready for it. Be strong and live your life through the covering of the Most High. He wants to fight for you and protect you if you are His. So stay connected to Him and place your life in His hands and trust Him. Many sorrows shall be to the wicked, but he who trusts in Yahuwah, mercy shall surround him. That's Psalms chapter 32, verse 10. Mercy shall surround you who trust in Yah. So stay out of their fake world and live in His reality, and trust only in Him, and He will see you through. Your eyes have now been opened and updated to what is going on in this world. Please stand steadfast in your faith and get your houses in order. Be blessed, everyone. Hallelujah. Praise Yah. Okay, thanks again for watching. If this has blessed you, please make sure to like it and please share this with others. If you haven't done so already, please make sure to subscribe to this channel. Elohim willing, I upload every Friday. Also, please don't forget to subscribe to this channel on Facebook and Instagram, as well as on my website, truthunedited.com. As always, I'd like to thank all who donate and contribute to this ministry. Please know that your donations are truly a blessing to this ministry. Thank you for your prayers, your love and support, and letting our Father use you. You are truly a blessing, and I really appreciate your support, especially during these times. Be blessed. Okay, thanks again, everyone, for watching. I love you all.